Good morning. Thank you for joining Forge Breast Cancer Survivor Center for our coffee conversation. Today, we're going to be talking about coping through gardening with Elizabeth Vander Kamp. She is a woman of many skill sets and she is just a bubble of joy. So we are so excited that this is another thing that she gets to talk with us about. And for those who might not know about the amazing person that you are, could you just introduce yourself to everyone, Elizabeth?
Thank you, Janita. I don't know what to say after that, except that I'm so glad to be with you all and talk about gardening. And I've been a partner with Forge in doing flower arranging, which we'll talk about later, and Zentangle and things that actually are really related to nature. So I'm just so happy that y'all are here and look forward to your questions and thoughts. So thank you.
I noticed the painting that you have in the background. Did you do that one in your business?
I did.
Oh, what's the story behind it?
Um, well, as you'll hear, I love flowers. I love flowers. And it just dawned on me a few years ago that I could actually grow them. So I'm kind of new to the whole gardening world, but a woman that actually she and my grandmother learned to paint together in their 70s.
Mm.
And I have a lot of her paintings in my home. Some of you may have heard of her, Maggie Pickett. She was a Birmingham institution for a while, but she painted tulips a lot. And that painting is me copying Maggie Pickett and just playing and always having flowers, even if it's not the season for them. So
Well, it's so pretty.
thank
So
you. Thank
pretty.
you.
So, um, I love gardening, but it is something that's new to others. And so when we think about gardening, some people think of the stress of keeping something alive and, where to put it, where not to put it. And, we kind of want to change the scope for some of those people, right? So like gardening can actually be a coping skill or a mechanism to kind of help you manage your stress. So can you talk a little bit about how gardening can be identified as a healthy coping mechanism?
Sure. And so I know Beth is an avid gardener. If would you just raise your hand or give a thumbs up if you already garden? Okay. Okay. So I'm talking to the choir. Okay. I want to honor, and if you hear anything and you're like, that's not my experience, please feel free at the end to correct me. But I think as a coping mechanism, and I am going to get a little maybe woo woo, is that in the culture that we've created in the West, sometimes it can, I'll speak for myself, I can feel very unconnected to nature, unconnected to the rhythms of the earth. And gardening has been a way to reconnect to that. And as a coping mechanism, I think that it is so immediate, not all of it, but I'm looking out in my backyard right now. I can go out and pull a weed right now, which I've also heard that weeds are flowers also once you get to know them. Weeds are really just flowers that grew someplace that we didn't want them to, but they can be our friends too. So I think the immediacy of it can be a coping mechanism. Also, gardening is really often about hope, that I'm putting these seeds in the soil, I'm hopefully put them in the right place, I'm giving them water, fertilizer. Maybe I do talk to my plants. I'm just like, please grow, please grow, please grow. And then when it does, I think, oh my gosh, I got to participate in the act of creation.
Mhm,
Um, and there's something beautiful about that. It
mhm.
also, my experience of gardeners is incredible generosity. I think there's something about seeing the abundance of the earth in our own yards that makes us feel abundant too. And I don't know about you, I'm gonna pick on Beth again. We usually have way too many squash. Like nobody in our family likes squash. Our daughters don't like squash. So it's like squash for the neighborhood. We would just put out a basket and people can have squash. So I think there's something hopeful and generous and immediate about gardening. And all of those things to me are great ways to cope with living with cancer, with any other human condition that maybe we need a little help with. And don't we all need a little help all the time?
Mhm, mhm. And I like how you were bringing up, you can be a part of creation. And when I think of gardening personally, I think of it in a metaphorical sense. Me nourishing that flower is a way of nourishing myself. Like, how am I taking care of this flower, in turn taking care of me, if that makes sense?
Mhm.
And so I love that you brought that up because that's kind of how I view it personally. And so like I said in the beginning, sometimes people can be overwhelmed when they hear gardening. Like I have family members that can't believe I have live plants. I grew up where live plants were just not allowed in the house because they were too much work. It's stressful to water them and keep them alive and all of that hot jazz. But for somebody who's coming from a setting where they're not used to seeing or having the responsibility of taking care of flowers and just kind of linking that to a healthy coping mechanism, what are some I guess the long way of me, I took the long way asking this question, but what are some tips for somebody who's beginning this journey? Where do they first start when they are looking to start any just healthy gardening that's not overwhelming?
That is a great question. And I'll just fess up, and Janita's heard me say this. I went through the master gardening program, which I highly, highly recommend if you have time and for that. But one of the results of it for me is now I'm scared of my garden because now I know all the things I can do wrong. And so I'm slowly but surely getting over that. And what I would say, and I too, I grew up in apartments. I didn't even have a yard. We didn't have house plants. So it's only as an adult that I've come to this. So I would really recommend starting small. And this is what I was told about cooking. Because I learned to cook late in life also. That what do you like? Like if there's I was thinking of, like, let's say there's an herb that we really like to cook with. Like personally, I love basil because I love pesto. So what if I could grow basil and then go out and pick the leaves to make the pesto? Or I just planted lavender a week or so ago, and my hope is to harvest the lavender and make little sachet pillows to give as gifts for people to put in their drawers.
Hmm.
So to think of there's so many options, but I would just say start small with something that you already like. Or if there's a flower or a color, maybe I love orange. So I'm trying to grow poppies this year, orange poppies. But something that we're already attracted to that's gonna be like, oh, I want that. I want to taste that, or I want to see that, or I want to smell that, and just start there. And I'd also like to say, like, I have my friend, my little maidenhair fern here. And even let's say maybe a whole garden is just like, no, thank you. I'm not ready for that yet. Just a house plant can give us hope, can give us like, okay, I've taken care of that. Maybe I can go on from there. Um, Also, we are blessed, and if you're in the Birmingham area, or I would say all over Alabama, with all kinds of garden shops. And my experience is those people are really helpful, and we can go and say, I'm new, I don't know what I'm doing, but I love mint. What
Mhm.
should I do? And I can tell you this, put mint in a container or you will only have a mint garden. And I can see the gardeners going, yes, yes, that is so true. um, or maybe I love rosemary or just something. So find something that we like and then go with that and let that give us confidence. Okay, well, this grew. And honor that not everything works out every time. And to treat it as much as possible. I'll have to say I have wept over sunflowers that the squirrels ate. I really did. I cried for a whole afternoon. I came home from work and my 4-inch sunflowers all had a bite through them from the
Oh,
squirrels. So, and that's part of being in nature. We're part of nature. So are those freaking squirrels. And the birds that eat all of our peaches and all of that. But that there's something mystical, I think, in a way, and so of the earth, that we're co-laboring together in this great act of creation.
mhm. Um, I love that you brought that up too. Like I love all the things you say. You just say them in such a soothing way, if you will. Like I love the way that you kind of break things down. But like when I think of flowers, I don't even think about the fact that they're like in nature per se. Like a lot of times, like if I get a flower and I'm just like, but this is mine. Like why are you touching it? Stay away. But also I had a really hard time coping with flowers dying. I just assumed a lot of blame, like, oh, I wasn't watering it right. I didn't plant it in the right place. I didn't fertilize it right. I didn't prune it right. So I can understand how a new person to this realm of growing anything could feel a little discouraged, like if they buy something and they're trying it out and they YouTube it or whatever, and then it dies. It's just hard to accept.
It is. And if we can, what I've tried to do is change my mindset that it's all an experiment. And
Mhm.
now I know, okay, zinnias don't grow over there, or the cosmos poop out because they got too hot, but also to celebrate the successes. And I would just, on this journey, it's nice to keep a journal, I found, of just like when I planted things. And I don't know about you all, but like my favorite part is like to plant maybe a little row of cosmos, and there's the seed and there's the seed, and then that little sprout. It's like, oh my gosh, it's gonna work, it's gonna work, oh my gosh. And and then the variety, how the sunflowers kind of go like this, and then they pop up and they're like this. It's almost like I feel like I'm watching a dance of just how things unfold from the glorious darkness of the earth into the sunshine. And I, y'all may have heard this. Actually, gardening has natural antidepressants in it. Have you all heard
Mm.
this?
Mhm.
Okay. Yes, I see Norma ishing. And it's a microbe called Mycobacterium vaccae. And if you've been out in your garden and dug in the dirt and noticed like you feel more peaceful and happy, you're not imagining it. That is actually what happens to us. And I'll say, in my experience, I have some arthritis, not really bad, but I would think, working in the yard, it'll hurt more. It actually hurts less. And I think it's these microbes that are infusing me with serotonin that makes me feel better.
Mm.
So it's actually physiologically affecting us to go play in the dirt, literally. So we're not imagining it. It's really happening. And I just personally, I love that. And I think I'll say as women that we're so tied to the cycles of the earth and of the moon, and that the more in tune we are with that, the more in tune we are with ourselves. And what a beautiful thing that is.
Yes, indeed it is. Um, so when somebody wants to begin this journey, and now they know where to start, but then there's a stress of how do I do this every day, or how often do I need to do this every day? How should they address ways to incorporate this into their daily lives?
Great question. I think especially now, and I think it's no accident that this was planned for the spring. And I'm sure you all have noticed that, like, what a beautiful slow spring we're having. And I think probably because that very hard frost we had in December, but
Mhm.
my azaleas are just thinking about coming out. a little like, is anything gonna happen to us again, or it's okay? So I think that just every day taking a look around the garden area or checking on the plants, like, oh, just sticking my finger into the soil of this fern, like, oh, maybe a little more water would be good, or maybe I could put you in a different window and see how that works. And it's so lovely. Like today, we've had this light rain where I am, of just trusting that Mother Nature does things, and we just get to sit back and enjoy it.
Mhm.
But I would just say checking on things and really reading the directions. And the thing that was hammered into our heads that I have to say, or my master gardener teacher would cut my hair off or something, is
Mhm.
right plant, right place. So I would caution against going to Leaf and Petal or someplace and going, oh my God, I like that, and I like that, and I like that, and getting home and then realizing I don't have enough sun, or it's too shady,
Mhm.
or I don't have well draining soil. So I would suggest going to a plant shop or a garden shop with a plan, because it's very
Okay.
easy to get overwhelmed.
Okay. Um, Before we get into, I know that you have some resources that you were going to share, which I think will be very, very lovely. I have another question though, because I know that we have an event coming up for flower arranging. And as easy as it kind of sounds, it's not always as easy depending on what you depict in your mind and what it means to even care for those flowers and what expectations to have. So what are some things that individuals could hope to learn at our upcoming gardening workshop?
Thank you, Schneider, for that. So please come, because it's going to be fun, and we're going to go over some of the rules of flower arranging. You may have heard, like, you usually do things in threes, and you want a thriller, a spiller, and a filler. Have y'all heard that before?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
I never heard it put that way, but yeah.
Okay, well, I love that. I learned that. So a thriller is, the flower that kind of catches our eye. The filler is maybe the greenery that sets it off.
Mhm.
Um, and the spiller is, that droopy kind of accidental, gorgeous kind of weeping willow effect that we get.
Mhm.
So but in our flower arranging class, we're going to touch on all that and then say, and you don't have to. Like, if you like purple and purple and purple and purple, go for it.
Mhm.
We will talk about making sure that, the leaves aren't in the water, because the leaves get all gross and the water starts to sink, and they stink and they take up all the nutrients. So
Mhm.
just some things to keep the arrangement that we make fresh and beautiful. Um, so I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll learn the rules, and then we'll say, we don't like those. We're going to do it our way.
Yes, like I love flower arranging. That's actually something that I do as a Mother's Day gift. I make flowers based off of people's favorite colors. And I just give them
Mm,
arrangements and stuff. So I love flower arrangements. And they, even though it's not, the typical like soil and this long journey, the journey with flower arrangements is shorter. It can still be just as beautiful because you still are creating something so unique.
exactly. And I like to say that too, that sometimes maybe we're not up for gardening. I mean,
Mhm.
maybe that's just too much. It's just too
Mhm.
big, too. But what we can do is appreciate other people's gardens.
Mhm.
And and we can appreciate the gardens that we have in the Birmingham area, the botanical gardens, Aldridge Gardens, the greenways. So I think that we can be gardeners of the heart and mind
Mhm.
when maybe our hands aren't up for it.
Mhm.
That appreciation does really beautiful things for us too.
Yeah, for sure. So I would love for you to share some resources that you wanted to kind of let everybody know that it's out there, especially as it relates to the Gardening program.
Great. So I'm gonna share my screen now. And so this master gardening is part of the Auburn Extension Service, and extension is literally what they mean. And y'all, this was news to me, that the mission is to extend the the knowledge and the love of gardening throughout whoever wants to do this. And there's a master gardener helpline, and it is a human who has gone through master gardening and beyond is there to help. And this is the phone number. Um, and they, in my experience, they are lovely people. And if they don't know right off the bat what's happening to our tomatoes, or why is our grass pooping out, or whatever is going on, they will find the answer and get back to us. So I hope that's helpful. But it is it is their great pleasure to help with gardening.
I mean, it is helpful to know. I might have to call them because my grass is dead right now.
Okay. Okay.
So if they can help me figure out, better ways to liven it back up, because as you know, I have the two big babies, the big dogs. And, I didn't know that dogs just trekking can actually kill your grass alongside with the rain because they're just patting that dirt. So just how to rejuvenate my yard. Like I'm probably gonna call them and ask them.
Yes, yes. And they will be able to help you. And so, and I guess I touched on this before, but my experience with gardeners and just looking at the people here, like Beth and Norma and Natalie, that um is your experience that gardeners are generous? Like once you learn something, you just like, let me tell you how to keep the aphids off your tomatoes. Like it's almost like a garden of knowledge just spreads out. And I think that's also good for the soul.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Elizabeth. And this has been wonderful um, to learn about. And thank you so much for sharing the resource. Like I said, I didn't even know that that was something that people could participate in, um, or people could take advantage of. Like there's basically a gardening hotline, if you will. Like, hey, like I'm
Yes,
having some issues.
it's not 24/7. I'll say that.
Right.
Like if you wake up 3 o'clock in the morning and you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do with my dogwood? Probably nobody's going to answer, but you can leave a message.
Yeah, I probably don't want to get up at 1 a.m. and say, hey, I'm outside and I can't see my plants growing. What do I do about that? But still, nonetheless, during appropriate times, it's a great hotline to take advantage of. Do you have any other final thoughts that you'd like to leave our viewers and listeners with?
Let me just look at my notes for a second.
Yeah.
Oh, um, again, I feel like I'm talking to the choir, but I want to just shout out to some of the places. If you've ever taken a trip down to Jemison to Petals from the Past, has anybody been there?
I've heard of it, actually. I was talking to a lady in Walmart about it.
Okay. Just as a treat for your eyes and nose, it's so beautiful. There's an orchard, there's an old farmhouse, they have a pond, and the staff, it's a husband and wife that own it, and then the staff is basically like retired PhDs. So you could say, how do I grow this? And you will get a dissertation on how to grow that if you want that. But and they are very big on natives and what works in Alabama. And Jason, the owner, he has a rule that I just love of he plants something and for 1 year he will water it on a very consistent cycle. And then it either grows or it doesn't. And he treats that as an experiment. Like, is this something that will thrive in Alabama? And if it is, great. If it's not, it had its chance, and that's life in the big city. That sounds pretty cold, but that's his approach, which I really appreciate, because it can in my experience, get overwhelming if I'm taking care of something that maybe really doesn't belong here.
Mhm.
So it's really good to pay attention, like, is this plant for this climate, for
Mhm.
where we live, for our
Mhm.
soil?
Which means you haven't failed at anything, right? It's just not at the right place, and
Right.
that's okay. You just start over and say, hey, what is going to be the right place? What is going to be the right time?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Elizabeth. This has been so wonderful. I know we're going to see you a million more times, but I never get tired of seeing you because you're just an amazing joy to have. And I'm so grateful that you're going to be the facilitator for our upcoming gardening event. I know it's going to be so fun.
Thanks, Janaya. And I have I want to answer Rhonda's question in the chat of like, where is the Master Gardening Program?
Uh-huh.
Thanks to COVID, I think you can do it online through Zoom. And I took it at the Botanical Gardens. There's a beautiful classroom there. And it's throughout the state of Alabama. So depending on the county you're in, there are different places to take it. I will say, Beth, have you done it? Okay. It's a pretty heavy duty investment of time. It's a few months for like 4 hours a day on a weekday. So it kind of thinks that you're retired or you have a schedule that will allow for that.
Mhm. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth.
You're welcome. Oh, you're welcome, Rhonda. You're welcome.